Hey, what's up, Lee?
Oh, just got done feeding the dogs a little bit ago. What you up to?
Not a whole lot, man. Just trying to keep up with all this social media nonsense, trying to push these t-shirts and stuff, dealing with this new puppy, and he's just screaming in the background because I won't play tug with him right now.
Yep.
So 6 rules of what? What was that again?
Oh, I told you that one thing that we should talk about in the K9S world is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I don't agree with him on some political things. But one thing you got to give him credit for is the man knows how to be successful. Whatever it was that he wanted to achieve, as far as I know, he achieved it. Now, maybe he had some other dreams that we don't know about. But what did he wanted to do? He wanted to be a bodybuilder, and he won, what was it, Mr. Universe, something like 7 times. He wanted to get into acting. He has been in countless roles, made a tremendous impact on the movie industry with movies like Conan the Barbarian, Predator, Terminator, True Lies. How many other great movies has he been in?
Oh, yeah.
Then he wanted to be a politician, and he became the governor of California. So the man knows how to be successful. Even if you disagree with some of his views, you can't disagree with his strategy. And he has 6 rules of success. And the first rule is, he says, to trust yourself. Now, look, if you don't know what you're doing, go out and learn what you're doing. So, you need to get counsel. You need to get an education. You need to learn things. You need to develop an education. But once you develop an education, trust your instincts. I mean, again, I'm assuming that a person has an education. If you don't have an education, you need to go get one. So one other rule maybe I should add to Arnold Schwarzenegger's rules is the first rule is go get an education, a real formal education. I don't mean a social media education. I don't mean a internet Google education. I mean a real formal education where you can learn from people who are experts in their field, whether they be trainers, behavioralists, animal scientists, whatever it is. Go out and crack a book, get experience, get knowledge, and when you have education and experience, then you develop a real understanding. And once you have that understanding, now we're going to go into Arnold Schwarzenegger's 6 rules of success. And that first rule is to trust yourself. You know what it is that you want to achieve, and whether you can articulate what it is you want to achieve or not, may be another thing. But if you know you can achieve it, trust yourself. Don't worry about what some of the other people say. You need to decide what it is that you want to do, and then you need to spend your life pursuing your goals, regardless of how crazy your goals sound to somebody else. So trust yourself. Go for it. The second rule that Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about is break some of the rules. He says, don't break the law, break the rules. And what that means is you can't, like, let's say you're going to go compete in a competition, and a competition says the dog must heel on your left side. Okay? So the dog has to heel on your left side. You can't, I'm just making this as an example. Right. Okay, so you can't put the dog on your right. You can't break the law. You can't get kicked out. But what you could do is make that dog walk on 2 feet, or hop on 1 foot, or walk normal, or look up, or walk backwards. What Arnold Schwarzenegger means by break some of the rules, he doesn't mean get disqualified. He doesn't mean get arrested. He means do it your own way. Be a maverick if you have to be, is what he says. That you're not going to be a true original if you're afraid to be a maverick. And so if you want to go out and trust yourself, rule number 1, and break some of the rules, means rule number 2, if you're going to just copy what everybody else does, you're never going to be an original. So if you want to do something original, you have to be willing to do it your own way. And that's rule number 2. The third thing he says is don't be afraid to fail. And what this means is go out and try it. Even if some people say it can't be done, you're not going to know if it can be done until you try it. Now, again, a lot of people seem to be, in the canine world, hung up on public trials. Public trials are probably 1% of trials. 99% of real trials are done in private. It's what you do with your friends. It's what you do with yourself. If you're assessing the results, you won't know if you can do something until you try it. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to get any credit for it, but it knows whether you can achieve it or not. So, don't be afraid to fail. It doesn't mean go compete in some sport. It doesn't mean go compete in a show competition. It means go for your goals and see if you can achieve your goals. And if you're worried about achieving your goals and you never try, if you never ask that person to go out on that date, and the answer is already no, you'll never be successful if you never try. You got to try. You got to go for it. So, so that's rule number 3: is don't be afraid to fail. Go for it. Have the courage to step up and try something that nobody else has done. And then the 4th rule, he says, is ignore the naysayers, which means anybody that's going to try something new that nobody else has done is going to get hate. You know, there's a lot of haters in this world, and haters will sometimes hate on you because of your goals, and sometimes they'll hate on you because you're successful in obtaining your goals. And these haters will say it can't be done because they don't know how to do it. And these haters will hate on you because you're successful and they can't do it. And so sometimes these naysayers will try to bring you down by accusing you of things that don't even apply to you. You know, one of the things I think is important to be successful is to always stay positive in your mind. Because if you're not positive, you're not productive. You have to be productive. You have to maintain a positive focus. And naysayers, there are times that they can be very frustrating because they'll make false accusations that can get under your skin and it can frustrate you. But you know the only reason they're making these accusations is because they were not able to do it, and you're doing it. So you just have to remember that haters are going to hate, so to speak. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's right on that. That ignore the haters. Now, sometimes you have to address them very blunt, very direct, and just to put the information out there so you can continue to move forward.
Right.
But most of the time, they expose themselves because naysayers usually are not the smartest people in the world. And a lot of these people have made a lot of mistakes and they can't even keep their lives and hate straight. So it's generally speaking easy to tell an authentic person from a hater. So that's rule number 4 is to ignore the haters. The 5th rule he has is work like hell. And I love this line that he has is, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in your pockets.
Yeah.
If you want to climb that ladder of success, you got to work like hell. A lot of people have $1 million goals, but they have minimum wage motivation. You know, if you want to go out and achieve your success, you got to work. And that doesn't mean you need to work to achieve other people's goals. That's the naysayers. Don't worry about the goals of the naysayers. You got to go back to rule number 1, trust yourself. Pursue your goals and work like hell to obtain your goal. And then when you do obtain your goals, give back. And that's what you're doing right now, Eric, and that's what I'm trying to do right now, is give back some of the things that I've learned over the last 20 years of breeding and 30 years of education and experience to give back to other people that have their own goals in the canine world so they can obtain their goals, because nobody's paying me to do this interview. This is a volunteer. Maybe you get YouTube monetization, but you started this because you wanted to give back. And for the record, not to cut you off, but and that was another thing that I wanted to stress to people is listen to these interviews. This is not people who are trying to get paid, or these guys are on here giving you information, gems, pearls for free. So it's like, this is just out of, what did you say before, Lee? You said a labor of love. I love the way you put that, a labor of love. I mean, a lot of the guys that get on here, especially the ones that are worth anything, you know, they're getting on here and they're passing along knowledge, not to get anything in return. They're just trying to help the future generations. And 20, 30 years from now, God forbid anything happens to the Google, YouTube platform, people are going to hear this still, the guys that are coming up. So, yeah, that's definitely a good point. Continue. So, if you add up all the, is my business profitable now? Yes, it's profitable now. But if you were to add up all the hours that I have put in to develop this business into a possible profitable business over the last 20 or 30 years, then I would probably be making minimum wage. This is not what I would want to do if I wanted to become a millionaire. If I wanted to become a millionaire, man, go learn some math. Go invest in the stock market. Look, you want to invest in the stock market to make $1 million? Find some company that has a need in the future that is undervalued and is profitable, and invest in that company. And then you will make millions of dollars. And you can do that with a small percentage of the hours that I put into my dog business. I do this because I want to do it. I'm not invested in the stock market because every penny that I had that I could spare was back into the dog. You can't take it with you when you die, so I don't need $10 million when I die. I just need to know that my family's secured.
Yeah, for sure. You've never seen a U-Haul follow a hearse, that's for sure.
That's right. So the summary of the 6 rules of success, if you want to learn those 6 rules of success, just go to YouTube and type in Arnold Schwarzenegger 6 rules of success. It's a great speech. The first one is trust yourself. The second one is break some rules, which means be original. Do it your own way if you need to. The third one is don't be afraid to fail, which means go out and try. The fourth one is ignore the naysayers, ignore the haters. Everybody's going to have people that tell you it can't be done. That means if you're the first one to do it, and I honestly do believe I am one of the first people ever in the world to have created a game-bred band dog. That doesn't mean every band dog that I produce is game. It just means we have developed a very consistent line in that venue. And so the naysayers are going to say it can't be done. Well, that means you're the first to do it. Now, I like that Arnold Schwarzenegger says, I love it when they say it can't be done. Because what they're telling him, what they're telling me, is they don't know how to do it, and watch me be the first. And then the fifth one is work like hell. It's not going to come easy. If it was going to be easy, everybody would have done it already. And you're the first to do it because it's hard to do. So you got to go out and work like hell. And then the last rule is give it back. Give something back. And I'll tell you on that last one, give something back. And maybe I'm getting old, but I'm kind of changed my mindset on give back. I do think it's important to give back, but I now only make an effort to give to those that appreciate my efforts. You know, a biblical principle is to don't cast pearls to swine. If you give to people that don't appreciate it, they're going to hate you for your gift. They're going to piss on your gift. They're going to try to destroy your gift. They're going to disrespect your gift. They're not going to value your gift. You need to take all that effort that you're giving back and give it to people that want the knowledge, that appreciate the knowledge, that value the knowledge, and most importantly, will use the knowledge in a positive and productive way.
100%. 100%. I agree. So we talked before, just chatting about some of these questions I have lined up for you, but I just wanted to get the same questions in for the people listening. And one of them is, will a game dog or American Pit Bull Terrier who is game bred protect? Meaning, are they strictly animal aggressive, or will they protect a person against another person?
Each dog is a little bit different. I mean, you can have a game dog that is animal aggressive. You can have a game dog that's been human aggressive. I mean, I've got dogs that will see people that they've never met as a prey item. We have to be very responsible with dogs like that because they are dangerous to people they don't know. They will attack a human being that they don't know the same way a lion will attack a rabbit or a human being that they don't know. But super good with my family because I'm not going to keep an unstable dog. But they also can be animal aggressive. The thing is, what you don't want to see, and this is where a lot of people probably think that a dog can't be human aggressive and also game. A game dog is not going to be defensive. And a lot of people think that protection means defensive. Well, defense is good in terms of implementation, which means when you're applying that dog for protection scenarios, you want your dog working in your defense. But that doesn't mean the dog needs to be in a defensive mindset. So you're not going to generally see defensive mindset in a dog that is a game dog, because a dog that is a game dog has a prey-driven or fight-driven mindset. It's not going to be defensive because He's game. He knows that he can win. He believes he can win. And a dog that knows or believes that he can win is not going to be intimidated. They may have a concern about maybe a person, but it's not a concern for their own self. Like, let's say, for example, if you're going to attack my daughter, whom I love very much, I might think that you're a danger to my daughter, but I am not concerned for my own safety. I'm confident on that I can handle the situation. So a game dog can be environmentally aware, and they can be protective of their families, but they should not be defensive of themselves because they're confident, secure gladiators that approach combat with either prey or fight mindset.
Okay.
The same way they would approach a rabbit or any other combative Roman gladiator, Colosseum type of situation.
Okay, so going to now I've gotten certain comments, and I've also heard other people say, you can just come up and take a game right out of somebody's yard. What would you say to that? Does it depend on the game dog you're talking about? Or does it depend on... 100%
depends on the game dog.
Okay.
100% it depends on the game dog, because there's some game dogs that you definitely steal that are, they don't see human beings as a potential threat or as a prey item, but as a master or a companion. So if, some people see a person as a companion, every person as a companion, then, you could steal a dog like that.
So we talked about gameness before being similar to a plate of glass that was thicker or thinner depending on when you were talking about gameness in one of our last interviews. My question is, can a dog be molded over time to sustain more pressure?
Yes, of course it can be. And so that might at first appear to disagree with the glass analogy, but remember, glass can be tempered. Glass can be treated. And how you treat that glass and temper that glass is going to have a lot to do with its ability. So, let's take Bruce Lee, who is a phenomenal, skilled combatant. You go out and take him when he's 10 years old and you put him in the ring with Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was in his prime, let's say, 24, 23, whatever it was, and have Mike Tyson hit Bruce Lee right in the face when he's when Bruce Lee's 10 years old, then Bruce Lee will never even train because he's going to be so scared that he's going to get that blow of death, and he'll be scared of combat. So, you can have the hardest combat that an animal will ever have is the mirror image of themselves, because a superior fighter that is truly superior will be able to control them, and an inferior fighter doesn't really test them. But the mirror image of themselves, it's like, when is this going to end? We can keep going and going and going. Well, the ideal game dog is a dog that will keep going no matter what. And somebody might say, well, it'll be even harder if the opponent is superior. Well, yeah and no. It's harder physically, but if that opponent that's physically superior doesn't have that same mentality, when you refuse to quit, they're going to quit. And if they quit, you weren't really tested the same because they quit. So the gameness is going to be tested by the individual that's determined. Gameness is not a measure of ability. Gameness is a measure of determination. It's not about how hard you can fight or how, you ever heard that statement, it's not about how big the dog is in the fight, it's how much fight is in the dog. But when it comes to gameness, it's not about how hard you can fight, it's how determined you are to hold the fight. And so determination is about that desire to stay in the combative situation. Ability, though, can defeat a game dog, but ability doesn't defeat gameness. It just defeats the dog, because that game dog may not have had that ability. But if you can increase that ability while sustaining the gameness, then you have a dog that is determined and able. And that's the goal of the American Sentinel, was to take the American Pit Bull Terrier and to make it a larger, more capable, and more powerful gladiator. So it's not only going to fight, an opponent of the same size in some sort of competitive venue, but it's going to protect your family. Because I'm breeding these dogs for protection work, so that my family has a determined gladiator to protect them when I'm not here or when I'm not able. Something along those lines.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And also for hog hunting. Hog hunting will kill a game dog because a hog can gut a game dog very quickly, but you still want gameness because, if that dog is locked onto its hold, it's going to keep the hunter safe. And that hunter will see that dog is going to need help. And, a lot of hunters don't really carry firearms, but most of the hunters I know actually, most of them, not all of them, but most of them do have a sidearm. They just never really use it. They just use a knife for hog hunting. Mm-hmm. But they have one, and if you need it to save your dog's life, you have it. You just don't really like to use it because you don't want to shoot a dog on accident.
Okay. Well, that's actually
when they were side by side.
Well, that's actually perfect timing, leading to one of my next questions. Now, we've talked a lot before about catch dogs and dogs being able to battle with wild boar. Now, what are your thoughts on dogs actually eating wild boar meat? Because I've been asked this 1,000 times.
It's 100% fine if it's cooked. I wouldn't let them do it raw.
No?
I know some people say, I wouldn't let them eat raw pork. No, pork carries a lot of diseases. I've heard some people talk about pseudo-rabies. Honestly, maybe I'm ignorant of pseudo-rabies, but my understanding is from pseudo-rabies is they get it from saliva. I would think if they get it from saliva, that it would be found in every fluid of the body. That's my own personal opinion as a biologist. Mm-hmm. But I have not studied pseudo-rabies. Pseudo-rabies is not rabies. It's actually like some sort of herpes virus or something like that. But it can kill a dog. However, I'm not too worried about that. Maybe I should be. What scares me about raw pork is pigs just carry a lot of diseases. Mm-hmm. So that is one animal that I would want to have cooked before I fed it to dogs. Now, people might say, if they want to be devil's advocate and argue with me, but when your dog is killing that pig or catching that pig, they're biting it and they're getting blood on their mouth. Mm-hmm. You're right, but it's all about the amount of exposure. The more exposure, the greater the threat. If you are exposed to some disease, like let's just say COVID, you walked past the disease, a person that has it, and maybe they even coughed in the air. That doesn't mean you're going to get it. It just means your chance of exposure is there. But if you're going to live with that person, and you're going to sleep with that person and kiss that person and share food with that person, your chances of exposure go way up because the more contact you have, the more exposure you have, and eventually that virus or infection is going to enter your system.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, so bottom line, if you're going to feed your dog pork, cook it.
I would. I mean, I don't tell people what to do. So.
Right. Okay. I see people that, they're training their dogs and they have, either themselves or they'll have their kids even put their hands in their dog's food bowl. How do you feel about that?
Completely stupid to do that with an adult dog that you don't already know. Mm-hmm. You should get an assessment of this dog long before that dog is ever around a child while it's eating. How do you do that? Well, the child should have been around that dog when it was a puppy. Maybe the child has fed the dog out of its hand when it was eating pizza, and the kid got done with the pizza, and there's a little bit of crust left over, and they give the dog crust, and you can observe how the dog responds to taking the crust. Does the dog take the crust as if it's a gift, or does it take the crust as if it's entitled and owns it? So, we should be aware of this canine-human interaction within your family long before. I mean, when I walk over and tell my kid to put its hand inside of a dog bowl from a dog that's eating that it doesn't even know, I would hope no person with a brain in their head would ever do that. However, do I trust my dog with my children? If my child was to put their hand in my dog's bowl, 100% I do, even though I don't let my kids go do that, because there are times, like my daughter feeds my dog every night, and I know that my dog is wiggling and happy and glad and doesn't feel entitled to the food. He feels like, thank you for giving this to me. He accepts it as a gift.
Right.
I've told people many times in my life, never take from anyone. You only accept. I don't care if it's your birthday or Christmas. You don't take a gift. You accept the gift. Because takers take things for granted. And if my dog is taking the gift like it's entitled, then that's a temperament problem. The dog should accept the gift. Nobody has to kiss my butt, but they should also know that if I'm giving them something, it's a gift. They're not obligated to my knowledge. They're not obligated to my time. They're not obligated to my money. They're not even obligated to my dog. Interacting with me is a gift, and interacting with you is a gift, and interacting with them is a gift. You know, when I was in college one time, I remember having a relationship with a person, and I decided to go my own way because I had a disagreement on another person's behavioral choices, and they were like, "You can't give me an ultimatum." And I said, "Nowhere did I give you an ultimatum, but I just observed what you wanted to do." And I said, "I don't agree with that. I'm going to go live my life." And they're like, "Well, you can't tell me what to do." Again, nowhere did I tell you what to do. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. Go be you. Thank you for even showing me who you are. But realize, now that I know who you are, the door to my life is closed because I'm not going to allow you in. Because while it is a gift to be involved with you, it's also a gift to be involved with me. And I know what kind of person that I want a relationship with, and I want a kind of relationship with a person that's going to be productive and positive and thankful and appreciative. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that's abusive or takes advantage or lies and steals. You know, I want to be in relationships with good, honest people that return the same respect.
Amen. Definitely. Let me ask you this. Have you ever, on your yard, experienced any kind of sickness amongst among your stock? Like, have you ever dealt with, say, parvo or rabies or anything of that sort?
Well, rabies, I think the last case for rabies in the state of Mississippi was like in the 1960s or 70s. Maybe they had like one or two cases, but not only have I never dealt with rabies, but I don't even know anybody that's ever dealt with rabies. So, you know, rabies is not serious. As far as parvo, I am extremely blessed. I've never had a single case of parvo on any dog on my yard, ever, in 20 years and 1,000 dogs that I've produced.
That's amazing.
But, yeah, it's awesome. But my vaccination method is not the same as everybody's. I'll go ahead and tell you how I vaccinate. I'm not telling other people how to vaccinate because, one, that would probably be illegal because I'm not a pet. Two, you need to go out and do what you believe in. I recommend you follow your veterinarian's advice. However, what do? I don't give them their first vaccination until they're 7 or 8 weeks old. I know some people give a vaccination at 5 or 6 weeks old. I do not do that. My understanding is the vaccination will not work until the maternal antibodies in the puppy have been used up. So I want to wait as long as I can before I give the first vaccination. And when I say 7 or 8 weeks old, if it's a dog I'm selling and it's going to be picked up at 8 weeks, I vaccinate that dog at 7 weeks. If it's a dog that I'm keeping, I don't vaccinate it until it's 8 weeks. If it's a dog that's going to go to the veterinarian to get its ears cropped at 8 weeks, I vaccinate it at 7 weeks. I want them vaccinated about a week before they're going to be exposed possibly to contamination. The other thing is I vaccinate on 3-week intervals. So if the first vaccination one is at 7 weeks, the next one will be at 10, the next one will be at 13. And I only give, for my own personal dogs, I only give 3 vaccinations. So it's going to be 8, 12, and 15 weeks. And actually that last one probably won't be at 15, well, it could be at 15 weeks, it might be at 16 weeks. And why do I say that? Is because around 3 to 4 months of age, they're also going to have to get their rabies vaccination. So that last one may be on record at the vet because I sometimes will have the vet do it at the same time to get the rabies vaccination, because the veterinarian has to give the rabies. I can't give a vaccination to my own dog for rabies. You have to get that at the vet.
Right.
The other thing I'll say, which probably has prevented me from getting parvo, is I will never buy vaccinations from a feed store. I get my vaccinations from my vet. Even the ones that I do here at my house, I buy the whole brick from my vet. And the reason why I do that is because feed stores hire a lot of kids to stock shelves. They open boxes and they stock shelves. They open boxes and they stock shelves. And kids and even adults nowadays, a lot of times are on their cell phone. And they open up a box and there's a bunch of vaccinations in there. And they got distracted with their cell phone. And then they go to lunch. And then they come back from lunch and they're like, oh, crap, I forgot to put those vaccinations in the refrigerator. And then they put them in the refrigerator because they don't want to get fired. And they don't tell the boss that the vaccination's been sitting at room temperature for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I get my vaccinations from my vet. That way they're properly stored, they're kept cool, and I've never had a problem.
That's actually a very useful piece of information. Let me ask you this. When it comes to the mother of puppies, do you vaccinate her before she's going to give birth, before she gets pregnant, while she's pregnant, after she gives birth?
I give them my females get vaccinated with a booster once a year. My males get vaccinated with a booster sometimes once a year, sometimes every 2 years. Kind of depends on the dog's age. If it's a 10-year-old dog and he's had, a male dog, I'm not going to give him a booster every year. I'll give him a booster every couple of years because I don't want to over-vaccinate. But as far as my females, I'll vaccinate them every year in their breeding age. Ideally, it's good to give them a booster, I think, right before delivery. I think it's like right before delivery. It may be at breeding time, but I think it's right before delivery. However, my exposure to parvo is so low that I have not really worried about it.
Okay.
The only disease I've ever had to worry and battle with out here in Mississippi is we have a bunch of lizards and birds. And lizards and birds both carry coccidiosis. So as long as you keep your water really clean and your kennels really clean, that's a really minimal issue. But there have been times when maybe a lizard got in a water bowl or a bird trapped in a water bowl, and we've had a couple of pups get it, but it's never been a real significant issue. It's just pretty easy nip in the bud.
All right.
They treat that with it wasn't on a video. I probably remember it, but I can't remember right now.
Okay. If I have, say, a female who is about to give birth to pups, should she have been vaccinated before she even got pregnant, or while she's pregnant, or after she gives birth, or does that not matter as long as she's vaccinated once a year?
Well, there are studies for that. Since I've never had issues with parvo, I have not been a strict follower. I only vaccinate my bitches once a year. However, I think the evidence suggests that you do it right before delivery, so it can, maybe like a week or 7 to 10 days maybe before delivery, but I can't swear to that. I would recommend that your followers get their advice from a veterinarian or do some research on that, because I do know this: when a female lactates, the very beginning of her lactation includes maternal antibodies, and those maternal antibodies will go through the digestive system of a puppy.
Right.
But once they puppy is a couple of years old, that those antibodies will not go through the digestive system. The antibodies in the early milk is called colostrum.
In your opinion, are most hip and joint issues directly linked to size or genetics?
You said size?
Yeah. Size or genetics?
I think most hip and joint issues are genetic and nutritional. And the reason why I say genetic and nutritional, and there may be a secondary effect caused to size, because I'm going to ask you, why are dogs big? Dogs are not big because we need big dogs. Dogs are big because of conformation. So when we breed on the basis of performance, the hip problems and the joint problems will go away. And when we breed on the basis of conformation, structure, and what we think, and kid ourselves into believing that we can envision the perfect dog, this is an illusion. You're not going to envision a perfect dog on conformation. When people say, well, the angle of the joint should be this for the maximum leverage, that's great when you're dealing with mechanics. Biomechanics, when you're dealing with the mechanics of machine versus biomechanics, two different things. Because a machine, you control every single variable of that machine, whether, let's just say, a track hoe. You control every single variable of that track hoe, one element at a time. If you want to change the piston, you can remove that one piston, leave everything else the same, and replace it with a different cylinder to have a larger piston that runs that crane on that track hoe, or that arm on that track hoe. You're changing everything one element at a time. You can't do that with biomechanics. With biomechanics, you go to change the angle of the leg. Well, you have a whole new dog. And when you have a whole new dog, you're changing the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system, the endocrine system. You're changing the mental structure, the mentality of the dog. You're changing so many things that you have no way of knowing that. Right. Even though biomechanically that certain 90-degree angle may mathematically be the ideal structure, that dog might be faster and it might be slower. And if it's faster, was it because of the better structure, or was it because of a better desire, or a better heart, or a better respiratory, or better metabolism? You don't know. You're just hoping that it's what you think. But that's an illusion. So since that's an illusion, just accept that it's an illusion, performance test the animals, and breed the one that wins. And when you breed the one that wins over and over and over again, those structures will start to disappear. They're not going to disappear immediately, because the dog with the best structure doesn't always win. Sometimes the dog with a better desire will beat a dog with a better structure. There's a desire to continue moving forward. And so maybe a dog that has less than perfect structure can beat a dog with perfect structure. But if you do this long enough and test long enough and assess long enough, then you're not only going to get rid of the dogs that have lacking desire, you're also going to get rid of dogs that have bad hearts. You're also going to get rid of dogs with bad hips. And so if breeders as a whole, over time, would compete, again, and by competition, I'm not talking about some canine sport competition. I wish our society on the internet knew the real world about canine competition. Canine competition in sports probably makes up less than 1% of the real canine competition. Military is not competing in canine competition. Police are not competing in canine competition. They're evaluating their dogs to themselves, and they're earning the trust of the dog, or that dog is earning their trust because that dog is performing, and those handlers are starting to say, I trust this dog because of what he's done. So that dog is earning that trust because he's competed and he's displayed the winning traits of what it takes to be a high performer. And this is what we need to do with our dogs. We should not be kennel blind. We test our dogs, but we've got to find the ones that continually rise to the top. And when people will do that, they won't be worried about who's got the biggest dog. They won't be worried about who's got the best looking dog. And that's why I put those two groups together, because a lot of times the really big dogs, like the English Mastiffs, the reason they're big is not because they won. That's because of the show. People think a dog should be big, so they bred the dog to be big because they thought it looked better when it was big. And that's show dog mentality. So show dogs have hip problems because they don't win in competition. And they win a competition that's based on show, but they don't win a performance-based competition. So when you start competing for performance, these hip problems go away. Wolves are bigger than dogs. Wolves don't have hip problems.
Right. Okay.
Because nature kills them if they have a hip problem.
Right. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to survive.
I don't care if you have 3 legs. Doesn't matter if you have 3 legs. If you win, you're worth breeding. And you might think, well, why would you breed a dog with 3 legs? I'm making an analogy here. Don't take everything literal. However, if you did have a competition, then a dog with 3 legs wins, which you and I both know that's extremely unlikely. But let's just say hypothetically it happened. Then the dog that won with 3 legs was a better dog.
Mm-hmm. Because he had the heart behind him.
He had the heart, the respiratory, the endocrine, the desire. He had all these other things that you forgot to measure because you only counted 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're like, well, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not that simple. You got to compete and you got to see who wins. And in time, you will illuminate these other issues. Now, the other thing is nutrition. How healthy would you be if you ate cereal for the rest of your life? Kibble is another word for cereal. So, and the problem with that is we think, okay, well, I want to feed raw. All right, well, you better be really educated because feeding raw is not as easy as just feeding raw. You better understand balanced canine nutrition because what one dog eats is not the same as what another dog eats, especially if you have big dogs. The calcium phosphorus ratio in a dog that's a large dog that's growing versus a large dog that's not growing is different. It's weird. Like a growing dog, a large dog that's growing has a calcium phosphorus ratio that they now recommend of 1.2 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus. And what's crazy is an adult dog can be as high as 2 to 1 ratio, 1.77, 1.8 to 1 calcium phosphorus ratio. And then the maximum percentage of calcium is like 2%, and some places it's like 1.2%. It's really weird because what's crazy is there's some high performance dog foods for like sled dogs and game dogs and stuff like that it might be as high as 2.3%. And what's weird about that is wolves eat a much lower percentage of calcium than dogs do, and that's a little bit strange because you'd expect wolves to eat bones and stuff, but I guess they really don't. I'm trying to learn more about nutrition myself, but because nutrition is not my personal expertise. You know, I'm more of a geneticist, behavioralist, husbandry kind of guy. But wolves don't eat as much calcium as a dog does on a percentage basis. However, wolves also eat, I think their caloric needs are 2 to 3 times more because they're so much more active than most house dogs. I'm not talking about a working dog now. I'm talking about house dogs. Mm-hmm. Their caloric needs are 2 to 3 times higher. And so even though their percentage may be lower, their total income of calcium is greater because they're eating so much more. And that's also kind of weird because they go through these massive fast periods where a wolf might eat 20% of its body weight in one day and then may not eat again for 3 days. So that's kind of weird also. So Don't game dogs go through certain fast periods? Well, I think every dog should be fasted like 1 day a week unless it's pulled out, or if they're nursing or growing. If it's a growing dog, I feed them twice, 2 to 3 times a day, 7 days a week. If it's a nursing dog, I feed them twice a day. If it's cold weather, I feed them at least every day, once a day. If it's warm weather and it's an adult dog and it's not growing and it's not pregnant and it's not nursing, then I will fast them 1 day a week.
Okay. See, I've never, the only time I've ever fasted a dog is if he had loose stool. I would fast him for a day, you know, not feed him anything just to let him get all that out.
Yep.
Okay.
Trying to slow down the digestive system, I understand.
Right. Let me ask you this. So we've talked about crop deers and we've talked about your mid-dock philosophy on the tail. What is your take on dew claws? I have never produced a dog that had dew claws on the back legs, not one. Mm-hmm. So on the back legs, if they had dew claws, I took them off. But on the front leg, I leave them alone. The dew claw is the dog's thumb. So let's say you have a dog that, I know they don't have opposable thumbs, but they still have a claw. So if you ever watch a dog chew on a Kong toy, imagine that Kong toy is a rabbit and the dog is a wolf.
that dew claw helps them when they're holding that rabbit or their palm toy down with both feet, and the rabbit is in the middle where their mouth goes. Sometimes they might let go of the rabbit with their mouth, and they're just holding the rabbit with their claws, and they may look up to see what's going on around them. Well, that dew claw helps hold that rabbit in its prey item. And when you're doing protection work and you're wearing scratch pants, you can feel that dew claw kind of grabbing onto you. So that's their method of helping to hold on to their prey. I'll leave it alone. I did not remove it.
Okay, so I have one last question, but before I do, my good friend and follower Jamil had two questions. And one, I'm going to go back to his comment here. Will you ask him to break down the in-depth physical and mental conformation of a game dog, like why the front assembly is important, elbow, chest set ratio, and how these things...
Anybody that thinks the elbow and chest and ratios like this probably hasn't been in good relations with game dog competitors. Because if you go to a person that really knows game dogs, they don't look at that stuff. Mm-hmm. They don't. They condition their dogs, and the dogs that are not able to take conditioning are not used. And the dogs that can take the conditioning are then tested for gameness. Mm. Those things are kind of like the three-legged dog.
Right.
You know, you don't worry about counting the legs. You don't look at the angle of the joints. You condition the dog, and you look at its recovery. If the dog is able to recover quickly and efficiently, let it rest, and then let it get up after cut a nap and see if it's slow and stiff. Mm-hmm. If the dog is slow and stiff, there's probably something going on there. Maybe it's a nutritional problem, or maybe it's a metabolic problem, or maybe it's a joint problem. Mm-hmm. But there's some sort of problem that dogs should deal with. Dog metabolism is so much faster than a human being that if they are going to be conditioned, they can be exercised every day. So a person that hunts, they'll hunt, maybe every day of the hunting season sometimes. I know people that go out and they hunt with their dogs to catch hogs, and they might be hunting 10 days in a row, and those dogs might be running 10, 15, 20 miles. And if you're running, let's just say you only went 5 miles. The dog's not running a straight line for 5 miles. For that dog to cover 5 miles in some hunting area where there's 6, and they're running around through bushes and they're zigzagging back and forth. Mm-hmm. It may have been a 5-mile run that you were cruising on your side-by-side, going from one location of the hunting zone to another location on the hunting zone, cruising down a dirt trail, but that dog's not driving down a dirt trail. He's running zigzag. Let's see if I covered twice that area. And he might be doing that every day for the next 10 days, and yet you open up the dog box after the dog came home and got a meal and some water. And what does the dog want to do? Because of his desire and his instincts and the way they've been bred to hunt. Those beagles that go out and chase those the game, or the bay dogs that go out and chase the hogs, and the catch dogs that go out and catch those hogs. It's what they live for. Love it.
Okay.
If that dog is lame, you're running with the wrong stock. At some point, desire is not enough. You got to have ability too. So.
Do you agree that that dogs heal faster than we do?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Sure, I absolutely know that they heal faster than human beings. Mm-hmm. A human go out and dogs have some amazing qualities. They don't have self-pity too often, and they don't have psychological trauma based off of coaching expectations. If something bad happens to a human being, humans are told that they have to go get counseling and express their feelings. And this is something that's different between, like, me and my wife, maybe, is if I have something negative, I kind of just want to change my mind and be positive and go on and just kind of like bury it and move forward. Mm-hmm. My wife is kind of like, she wants to talk about it and work it out. And maybe that's a man-woman thing. I don't really know. I don't want to get into that. But my point is everybody's different. But dogs, they don't have it. They just like forget about it and move on. If something bad happens to them as a puppy, yes, maybe they can have a negative memory, and maybe if it's extremely traumatic, you might have to recondition that animal and train it and give it other accommodations. But for the most part, let's just say hypothetically, I'm never saying that crazy hypothetical. You had a bad day at work. You come home, and that dog just crapped on your floor. Maybe it crapped on a book that you've been reading, and you wanted to finish the book tonight, and you're just pissed. And you react in a way that you shouldn't. And you, like, fuss at that dog, and maybe even smack it in the head. This is not acceptable.
Right.
Okay, this is not acceptable, but I'm painting a picture. Okay?
Right.
You take it out on the dog that you were in the book. Then tomorrow you come home and you're like, hey, buddy, I'm sorry. Come here. The dog walks up to you and gets over it, unless you were really abusive. People will be mad at you for a week, and they would want to, like, or maybe the rest of their life. Now, I'm not condoning abuse. I think you understand that. But my point here is,
of course,
probably like 70% to 90% of human beings have had, maybe even higher than that, some sort of traumatic experience that they encountered. And a lot of these people probably think it's like 20%. But, they're afraid to say all of these things. But a lot of people have had something negative happen in their life, and they don't even tell anybody, and they get along just fine. But then other people have to talk about it, and talk about it. One of the things that's cool about dogs is get over it.
Yeah.
And why is that? That's because the wolf that pouts in nature, or the deer that wants to pout in nature, is going to get killed. Every single one of your viewers has had a disagreement with somebody in their life at some time in their life.
Yeah.
And every single one of your viewers has made a mistake in their behavior at some time in their life on how they handled that argument. Now, that does not mean that it was okay to incorrectly handle a situation. It means you would like to go back and be able to do it differently. But what has happened has happened. Well, one thing that's cool about dogs is if you make a mistake on how you handle a situation, is they recover from it very quickly, as long as you don't remain a psycho.
Very true. For sure.
So,
but before we get any further, let me address Jamil's other question. And we already spoke about this in other interviews, and he's watched the other interviews as far as I can tell, but I think he wanted kind of more of you to just dive into it if you wanted to. What criteria must a dog meet before it's proven to be both stable and competent enough to be labeled either of the two, a hog dog or a protection dog? Are there any major differences between the two?
Stable means that the dog is not going to redirect. All right. So I should know if the dog is going to redirect long before I ever take that dog on a hog hunt or a protection scenario, or use it in a protection scenario, because when we are doing protection training or prey development, I'm going to have that dog focus on the prey item or the decoy, the agitator, and I will notice how that dog responds when I reach down to pet it, or how I, interact with that dog. If that dog can't tell the difference between me and a protection trainer or a prey item, then I need to correct that behavior and get that dog to focus on what's appropriate and not to redirect on what's inappropriate. And if the dog takes an issue with that because it's a rank-driven dog or a dominant dog, which I have never had, not even once, with one of my dogs that I have produced on my yard. Never once have I had that problem. Every single one of my dogs, the only dogs that I've ever seen redirect were little puppies, and they're mainly redirecting with each other. Someone will attack me. I think that's the only time I can see that happening is, one, you have a dominant natured dog, or, which I don't have, or two, you have a handler that doesn't know how to be calm and clear in the teaching. Because if the handler is calm and clear in the teaching and the dog is not a rank-driven dog, then some mild corrections and proper target acquisition
This should never be a problem. If you're having a problem with the dog redirecting time and time again, then yeah, you have an unstable dog. But like I said, you should know that long before you ever relied on that dog. Right? You should come in the first week of training. And I think about the people that have had problems with their dogs redirecting with them. Every single one of these people that have had a problem with their dog redirecting with them has been in one of two categories. Mm-hmm. And all of them were in one category except for one individual. The one individual had a dominant natured Rottweiler. Okay? So, yeah, they were going to have problems, and I was concerned about that. Because it wasn't just Rottweiler, it was a dominant natured Rottweiler. And I kind of expected them to have some problems. And they were always able to manage it. So, not a real problem, but I would not have wanted that dog. All the other people that had problems were people that were socially awkward, like autistic in nature, or just couldn't really, they may have been good intellectually, but their social demeanor was not able to read body language or respond to body language in a coordinated, deliberate fashion. It was like emotional outburst redirect them. And the dogs would respond to that. I've seen that with people, and I'm like, you're kind of creating this issue. And I'll just like take the leash from them, work the same dog in a good, low stimulus, calm, coaching, directive nature that's fair, not reactive, but proactive. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the problem. And I'm like, just be proactive. Don't be reactive. Be calm, collective, and clear and fair. And these problems will not happen in stable dogs.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you doing part 5. Man, part 5. I just want to say, I really appreciate you, man.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me and asking me to come in. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
And good luck to you and your listeners.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And we'll talk soon.
All right. You take care.